Good morning, everybody. And Jim, thank you for asking me to come and set the scene for today, which is obviously a conference where we're tackling and looking at the problems that poverty causes. And as was just mentioned in my introduction, I have personally experienced periods of homelessness and addiction. Came into recovery some 8 years ago. Prior to that, I was working on the railway. I used to manage Luton train station. Had great times working there. Unfortunately, things went a little bit awry for me, as I've mentioned, addiction and homelessness. And having come into recovery, I then decided that what I wanted to do was to try and help people that were in a position that I'd been in. And to that effect, I then joined No Enterprise, originally as a resettlement officer, and worked my way up through to be the leader of the welfare services for 3 years, and had great times at NOAA, some really good times. And then left NOAA 2 years ago to join LBC to work on the street drinker project that's already been mentioned, and have since become part of the public health, drugs and alcohol team. So I've prepared some very small presentation, but I just want to tell you a little bit about, because we talk about poverty, so what is poverty? What is the national picture at the moment? And the Joseph Rowntree Foundation published a report in 2015 that has given us a really good in-depth view of poverty across the nation. Currently there are 13 million people that live in a low-income household across the UK, and half of those that live in poverty live in a working household. So we're seeing poverty not just amongst the worklessness, but those that are actually in work. The number of over 65s in poverty has fallen. However, the number of 16 to 24-year-olds has risen considerably. And of there were 2.14 million people unemployed in 2014. That has reduced to 1.8 million in 2015. So we're seeing unemployment reduce. However, only 57% of those unemployed in 2015 have claimed JSA, in comparison to 2014 when there was 65%. So what we're seeing is the reduction in the number of people that are seeking support whilst being unemployed. So there's fewer people claiming benefits. Also, we're facing a housing crisis nationally, but in particular in Luton and across Bedfordshire. And it means that rents in the private sector are increasing incredibly, beyond the local housing allowance, to the extent that actually, for many people, that when they're coming back into work, it becomes unaffordable. The majority of low-income households spend over a third of their income on rent. That's huge. That's huge. That's a large proportion of people's money going on rent. And only 37% of children who receive free school meals achieve 5 good GCSE, that's an A to a C, including maths and English results. And compare that to 64% of those who don't receive free school meals. So the effects of poverty are huge. So what can we do to address this, to tackle it, and to try and find some solutions? Now, I think if we're talking about homelessness, particularly across the borough across the county of Bedford, what we could do, and what we maybe ought to do, is a health needs assessment, and actually have a look and see where the health gaps are for the homeless across the county. This will then enable us to bring agencies together in partnership to try and find solutions, to give those that are facing poverty a voice in how strategies are developed and how we tackle poverty across the county. Now, health needs assessments help us to identify the health inequalities that homeless people face. So we know that the poorer you are, the shorter your life expectancy will be. The poorer you are, the less likely you are to be able to afford decent quality accommodation. So what we need to do is be able to identify exactly where these gaps are and find ways of filling those gaps. It's been mentioned that funding is reducing. We don't have money, certainly not within the local authorities. We're seeing the grants reducing on a yearly basis hugely. the funding is just not there. However, there are options, and one such option is social investment. Social investment is a way of using finance to meet social targets as well as providing financial returns. There's one particular project which I've highlighted here in London, which is run by Mungo's Broadway, the Real Lettings project. They've had over £36 million invested, and that money has been spent buying properties across London, which are then provided for homeless people. And what this means is that people who ordinarily previously would not have had access to accommodation are able to access affordable, quality, private rented accommodation. But also, because it's delivered through a homelessness charity, they get the mentoring and the support that they need to be able to maintain an independent life in their own accommodation. It's working to great effect in London, and there's no reason why we can't explore the projects to bring things like this into Bedford. We need to work together to see how we can do that and how we can explore social investment. Things were mentioned about some of the partnerships that have worked to great effect up to now, and I've been very lucky to be involved in these three: the Adults Facing Chronic Exclusion project, the Bedfordshire No Second Night Out project, and the Street Drinker project, all of which had a very similar way of working. All of it was about targeting the most vulnerable, most chaotic, and most in need people in our community. All of them were based around bringing all of you around the table, working together to find solutions, to work together to find ways and pathways out of homelessness, out of poverty, and it's worked. We've seen some great results, and later today there's going to be some awards, and some of the people that you'll be hearing their stories have been touched by these projects. They've come through these projects. But all three of those projects were pilots. All three of those had a short lifespan, none of them longer than 3 years. My challenge to this conference is how can we make those projects a mainstream service? How can we deliver those constantly? We've got people in the Borough of Luton, Bedford, Central Beds that deserve more and need more, and we have a responsibility to deliver that. So please use today to try and find ways. Thank you.